How many rock stars have written comic books? Which rock star wrote more comics than any other? How closely associated are rock stars with the comic book industry? We discuss all that and a lot more on today's show.
Before we begin, I want to remind you that if you love comics and pop culture as much as I do, you'll subscribe to my channel and ring the bell to stay informed of upcoming videos. Please share this video, as that will help me gain subscribers as well. I also have my own franchises, Adolescent Radioactive Samurai Platypi and Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter. The latter has been picked up by Cutthroat Comics. Check the links below for more details and the link to Dracula Rising, which is available on Amazon. And now,
on with the show, this is it.
This irresistible creature who has an insatiable love for the dead.
Number 1, Rob Zombie. I started collecting comics in the early 70s, says Rob. I remember the first book I ever bought was a Fantastic Four. Growing up, my comic tastes were pretty limited to either Marvel or DC. It seemed like there were only about 10 titles, so it wasn't hard to collect everything. While juggling careers as a musician and horror film director, the erstwhile White Zombie frontman is responsible for a run of titles, including Rob Zombie's Spook Show International, The Nail, Bigfoot, Whatever Happened to Baron Von Schock, an adaptation of his film The Devil's Rejects, and The Haunted World of El Superbisto.
Some of those that work forces are the same that burn crosses.
Number 2, Rob Morello. In 2011, the Rage Against the Machine guitarist and political activist teamed up with Dark Horse and artist Scott Hepburn for a 12-book series about a 16-year-old street prostitute who becomes a freedom fighter in a post-apocalyptic future. My goal for Orchid was that it would combine the epic story arc of stories like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Stephen King's The Stand or Tomb, but injected with class consciousness, Morello told Rolling Stone. That's something I've always thought was missing from those stories, where it's always, let's get the king back on the throne, let's get the princess back in the castle, you know? And all these poor serfs and peasants are getting mowed down on the battlefield to try to get that king back where he belongs. That element always sort of rang hollow with me, and that has been corrected in the story of Orchid.
God of thunder and rock and roll.
Number 3, Gene Simmons. Legendary rock god and multimedia mogul, Gene Simmons, has partnered with Arcana Comics to debut the all-new Simmons Comics Anthology at this year's San Diego Comic-Con. The anthology brings together the legendary comics originally created by Simmons Comics, which includes the first issue of Zipper TM, Dominatrix TMA with Circumflex, and Gene Simmons' House of Horrors TMA with Circumflex, plus the first chapter of the all-new crossover event, The Slave Trade, where Zipper TMA with Circumflex and Dominatrix TMA with Circumflex will face off against each other. We intend on using the finest artists and writers in the comic book medium, says Simmons. Zipper TM, Dominatrix TM, and Gene Simmons' House of Horrors TMA with Circumflex will be published throughout the year. For Comic-Con, we thought we would do something special and give the fans a jam-packed Simmons Comics Anthology featuring all of our comic book titles. This is just the beginning.
Broken this fragile thing now, and I can't pick up the pieces.
Number 4, Ryan Key, the former Yellowcard frontman, was invited by Marvel to write the script for the 4th issue of Edge of Venomverse. It takes place after the events of the Old Man Logan story, an 8-part story released in 2008, and features a vengeful T-Rex. I was beyond excited when I found out I was going to get to work with Venom for my first ever attempt at writing a comic, says Ryan. I don't know if you can count the comics I wrote and drew during class as a kid. Spider-Man was a huge part of my childhood, and Venom has always been, without a doubt, one of my all-time favorite villains in the Marvel Universe.
And do you ever feel like you're alone? And do you ever wish to be unknown?
Number 5, Tom DeLonge. In 2015, the Angels and Airwaves frontman made his foray into the world of comics with the 3-part Poet Anderson, The Dream Walker, co-written with Ben Cull and animated by Jet. A prequel to a short animated film of the same name, the story follows Jonas Anderson's journey into the dream world, where he becomes a guardian dreamwalker called Poet Anderson, who protects innocents while they sleep from the horrors their own dreams could pose in the waking world. That's helpful.
Oh, make me over. I'm all I wanna be. A walking study.
Number 6. Courtney Love, the former Hole singer and guitarist, teamed up with writer Stuart Levy and artists Ai Yazawa and Masaho Kujiratu for this 2004 manga series based in part on her life. We say in part, because the story follows an amnesiac girl called Ai, half human and half Dogen, a sort of alien angel hybrid, who moves from the war-torn Ai land to Tokyo with a heart-shaped box, cough, and attempts to relearn her past. Forging a new life as a rock star, she falls in love with a musician called Kent, cough, cough. I have always loved the Japanese culture and the people, reveals Courtney. Princess Ai is a great character because she feels like my alter ego, but in a fantasy setting.
I did my time and I went out. So if you say I'm fade, it doesn't cut. The soul is not so vibrant.
Number 7. Corey Taylor. Trapped in an alternate reality, the human must make his way to the House of Gold and Bones as he is chased by a crazed mob and taunted by mysterious ally, Alan. Not our words, but the words of Dark Horse, who published this 4-issue miniseries written by the Slipknot and Stone Sour frontman. When I was writing the story, I made a conscious effort to make it very visual, very evocative, something that the audience could grasp between the music and the story itself, regardless of visuals, says Corey. I loved seeing things and people who had been solely in my head come to life in color on paper. Richard Clark, artist, did such a great job of pulling my crude descriptions into amazing visuals. It was the sweetest part of this whole process. Stone Sour based their 2-part album of the same name on the comics. Number 8.
When I want you, wanna do you right where you're standing.
Number 8. Max Bemus, the Say Anything frontman, loosely recounted his experiences living with bipolar disorder in Polarity. Released in 2013, this 4-part series from Boom Studios featured art from Jorge Coelho and tells the story of a Brooklyn artist called Timothy Woods. After a car accident, he discovers that his medication has hidden his superpowers. The crazier he becomes, the more powerful he becomes, Max said. It was kind of my way of telling an allegory about how it actually feels to be bipolar, which is that you do have these enhanced sensory experiences. In this case, this guy can get enhanced strength and speed and can read people's thoughts, but it almost feels that way in real life. It's more of a comedy than anything, but at the same time it has lots of pathos and exciting moments, so it's not completely silly. Bemus also included a brand new song to download with each issue.
Mother, tell your children not to walk my way.
Number 9. Glenn Danzig. The Misfits vocalist launched his own comic book company Verotic in 1994. Intended for mature audiences, mostly for its violence and gratuitous nudity, his publishing house has released many titles over the last 25 years, including Veronica, Satanica, Jaguar God, Death Dealer, and a charming tale of a corpse prostitute called Grub Girl, which was made into a porn film in 2006. Glenn is currently working on a feature-length film featuring 3 Verotic characters for Cleopatra Entertainment. Number 10. Inch Scott Ian. Self-confessed comic book nerd and Anthrax guitarist Scott Ian joined forces with artist Sam Keith for a 2-part revenge story featuring Lobo, an alien bounty hunter who made his first appearance in a 1983 issue of DC Comics' Omega Men. In Lobo, Highway to Hell, the titular character coming face to face with a very grumpy Satan. Obviously, I don't just commit murder when I don't like something, but I understand Lobo's attitude very well, having been in a metal band almost my whole life, Scott told Wired. And I thought that writing it was going to be hard, but it felt more natural writing Lobo's dialogue than lyrics.
You could have been all I wanted, but you weren't honest.
Number 11. CLaudio Sanchez. We dread to think how many comic books the Coheed and Cambria frontman owns. We blame the parents, actually. I think my comic book origin story started with kitty clothes, he told Twin Cities Geek. I remember a picture of my brother and I when we were toddlers. I think I was wearing an Incredible Hulk shirt and he was wearing a Superman shirt. I think my dad had an interest in it and they bought a shirt and put it on us, so that's kind of the beginning. He began releasing his own titles in 2000, beginning with The Bag On Line Adventures. He now owns Evil Inc. Comics, who've released titles including The Amory Wars, Kill Audio, Key of Z, Translucid, and Good Apollo. I'm Burning Star 4, Volume 1, From Fear Through the Eyes of Madness. Try saying that after a pint.
In the cross, the world will stain us with the scarlet cross.
Number 12, Andy Biersack. Last year, the Black Veil Brides vocalist released a solo album and graphic novel titled The Ghost of Ohio. The story, which takes place over a 100-year period, follows the ghost of a young man who returns to southern Ohio after being put to death for a crime he didn't commit. I can't even begin to describe to you how excited I am to get to work with everyone at Z2 Comics to bring this story to life, said Andy at the time. Co-written by Scott Tuft and illustrated by Eric Donovan, the comic book was released last spring.
They got the beat, they got the beat, they got the beat. Yeah, they got the beat.
The Go-Go's Jane Wiedlin. Jane Wiedlin, guitarist for the classic female rock group The Go-Go's, tried her hand at comic book writing in 2010 with its space opera called Lady Robotica, illustrated by Bongo Comics co-creator Bill Morrison. Wiedlin cast herself as the hero who gets abducted by aliens and injected with nanobots intended to turn her into a slave. Instead, she becomes a superpowered cyborg who fights to liberate other slaves from the evil extraterrestrials. But after only 2 issues, it seems Wiedlin abandoned the project. That was our look at rock stars who wrote comic books. Do you know of any rock stars that we might have missed that wrote comics? What was your favorite comic book written by a rock star? Let us know in the comments below, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell to stay informed. Until next week, this is Andrew in for Kevin Given saying live long and prosper, may the force be with you and keep reaching for the stars.